Hello, everybody. This is a video concerning developing your controlling idea statement for your essay. Your controlling idea statement, not to be confused with the thesis statement, is not trying to promote an argument, but rather to create a concise and focused answer to the prompt. So, if you think about the prompt of our essay, we're looking at how did the European imperial powers, now remember, if you're writing about Japan, you're not going to have European there, you're going to have American, affect non Western societies politically, economically, or socially during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. So we have this little acronym called FaCT, which stands for focused and clear and concise and tenable. So I just want to explain those three elements. So as you take your basic outline into the next step, think about this when you're focusing on that statement. Focus stands for it should be very clear which theme your essay will showcase. You do not have to use the name of the theme, political, economic, or social. You're certainly welcome to, but you also could just imply that with the statement's contents. You also want the statement to clearly show how imperialism impacted the people that were conquered, and that your essay is not about the imperialists and all of the benefits that they experienced. That stuff will be important in your essay, but it's not really what the answer to this question is. So perhaps you have an action, for example, King Leopold II's desire to compete with other European nations. That's part of your sentence, but that's not the answer. You're looking for what was the impact of that desire. You want to avoid being too general. So, for example, you don't want to say something like British imperialism impacted the Indian economy significantly. The word significantly in this context is too vague. So, if someone like you in your head is reading this, you might know what the significance is. But think about somebody who's outside of your head who doesn't know what you know about the topic. They are not sure where you're going with this. The other thing that's really, really important and that many people tend to do is that they create a list. So I gave an example, and I apologize for the typo here in this document. Let's fix that. Um, to say something like British imperialism helped transform the Indian economy, give rise to new economic principles that allowed Indian industry to transform and westernize the nation's school and transportation systems. That's all really good, but you need to come up with a more concise way to package all of those three reasons as opposed to listing them. The next piece is just being clear and concise. That's what the C is. And that sort of is a good segue from where we just were. You'll notice that we don't want it to be overcomplicated or listy, and we want it to read easily and use very precise language. The last thing is for it to be tenable, and you might not know what the word tenable means. It's really just, can it be handled in what you're doing? So, for example, if you were to write a 2 to 3 page essay about, for example, the best basketball players that have lived in the 20th century, you wouldn't be able to do it in 2 to 3 pages. It's not tenable. But if you wanted to say something like the best players of the 2018-19 season, you probably could handle it in that length. So that comes back to being clear and concise and focused. So if your statement isn't focused or clear and concise, it's probably going to be untenable because it's going to have too much that you need to include, and you only have 2 to 3 pages. Thinking about that you're writing a 2-paragraph content within a 4-paragraph essay. So intro, 2 paragraphs, and a conclusion. So keep this in mind as you're developing it. And you'll notice that we put a couple of examples in here, and there's just one little exception here, is that students in a previous form of this prompt had to identify negative and positive impacts of imperialism, and we felt like that was too limiting, and we're really just leaving it up to effects of imperialism, and they can be both negative or positive. It's really up to you. So if you look at these statements, these all would fit into being focused, clear and concise, and tenable. So if you look at this one, it says British imperialism ruined India's financial structure, and racism and superiority led to the injustice as well as the belittling of Indian people. So if I looked at this, ruining the financial structure, I would assume would be one body paragraph. And then in the second body paragraph, I see racism leading to injustice. So you can kind of see where the two body paragraphs are going to go within the sentence. You'll also notice the next one said British imperialism in India had negative effects economically through restrictive and forceful regulations on trade. So that's going to probably be one body paragraph. And then the student goes on to say, and socially, because the British felt racially superior. That's a second one. The third example is Belgium imperialism negatively impacted the Congo socially through the poor treatment of the people and economically by stripping the nation of its natural resources. So again, these students had a slightly different prompt. They had to show negative and positive, and they also had the option of using two Persia themes. Again, we felt that like that was a little limiting, and we wanted to give you more freedom with what you could write about. So you only have to pick one Persia theme, and you could do all things that were positive, you could do all things that were negative. Ultimately, most of these incidences are examples of negative consequences on the Native people. There are a few examples of how the Westerners, Americans, and Europeans helped modernize countries and improve certain aspects of their societies, like infrastructure and communication and education. And those are certainly good examples for your paper, but just keep that in mind. All right, that is FaCT.